Coming up on this episode.
I felt this overwhelming sense of just love and trust and serenity. I've never been afraid of death. I know that death is not the end. I opened my eyes and I could see a non-human hand reaching out. I was not scared. I felt no fear. The last thing I saw was I was in my bedroom. And the next thing I saw after my eyes, now that I could see, was, I don't even want to call it a room because there was no structure to it. There were no walls, no ceiling, no floor. It was just a vast black space in all directions.
Come explore the depths of consciousness, where we raise the vibes and open minds.
Welcome to the next episode of the Grounded Galactic Twins podcast. I'm Allison, the Galactic Twin. Emily is not here for this episode. I have a very personal story to share with you. I'm going to talk about my near-death experience that happened in September of 2024. As I'm recording this, it's the end of April 2025. I've actually done a few interviews already on other podcasts and YouTube channels, but it's edited, it's abbreviated, it's not necessarily the full story. It actually starts off with an ET abduction experience. So you're kind of getting a double whammy. You're getting an alien story and how that ties into my near-death experience. They're very intertwined. And it's been a very powerful journey for me. It all started in January of 2022. It was the end of the month. I was having a particularly difficult time in my life, centered mostly around the work that I was doing. I was at the end of my rope in a lot of ways in life. Very highly stressed, just living constantly in survival mode. It was really affecting my health. It was affecting my family. I barely had time for anyone or anything but being at work or being logged into work 7 days a week for months on end, well over 8 hours a day. It got to this point where I didn't know what to do. I couldn't sustain it. I was going to bed one evening, and about 3 o'clock or so in the morning, I woke up as I normally do because my cat went out. I got up, let the cat out, laid back down in bed, and just could not fall back to sleep. I was so stressed and thinking all of these toxic thoughts about my life, my coworkers, people that were in my life. Why don't I change this around a little bit? Instead of having these toxic thoughts somehow, things should change, that I just try to put myself in a higher vibration and send these people love instead. So that's exactly what I did. I just started meditating, imagining and projecting love from my heart out to them wherever they were, and it calmed me down. I was also meditating on the pyramid shape, like the Giza pyramid, and that was really helpful too. I thought, okay, I can make it through another day, another week, another month doing this. It'll be okay. Less than 10 minutes had passed when I was doing that, and I was just laying there in bed, and I had my eyes closed, and I was over on my right side facing my husband, and he was dead to the world asleep. And all of a sudden, I started to feel like the atmosphere in the room changed. It's a really difficult thing to describe if you've never had alien encounters or encounters with other interdimensional beings or extra dimensionals. I've had several. So I kind of knew what it was, but they're all different. I just knew and felt that something was different and that it was not just me and my husband in that room anymore. I opened my eyes and I could see a hand, a non-human hand, reaching out like across my husband's chest and laying out with palm up right by my head as if it's offering me to take its hand. And I could see the being that was attached to this arm as well, but it was crouched. Our bed is kind of tall, but the being was still crouched, and I could see over my husband's chest, just sort of like the top part of the head, so I could see from the eyes up, and then the arm. That's all I could see. It was definitely an alien. It was definitely a version of Grey's. I've seen different versions. This was not quite your typical gray alien. It wasn't dull and gray like I've seen some others. It didn't have a greenish tint like I've seen some others. And I've seen some that had a more white tint. And this was more like, there was gray, but then there was like a pink overglow. It was really beautiful. And so I grabbed its hand. I was not scared. I felt no fear. I got out of the bed, still holding its hand, and stood up. And to my surprise, its arm, we have a king-size bed, its arm just stretched across the bed while it was still crouched over there next to my husband. And let me tell you this, I've had enough of these experiences to know what's a dream, lucid or not, what's an astral projection, out-of-body experience. I've had all of the above. And this was none of that. This was some version of altered reality, still here. Like I could still see my husband in my bedroom. Nothing was different about my room. I've had some astral experiences where it's like I'm still in my house, but there are a few little things wrong. Like there's a door that's not supposed to be there, or there's something in the floor that's not supposed to be there. It's 95% the same, but there's 5% of things that are just a little different. But in this case, this reality was very close to our reality. Every single thing about the room was the same. And I said out loud, why don't you just come over here? Because it was on the other side of the bed. As soon as I said that, boom, it was standing right next to me. I was asking all types of questions. What's your name? Where are you from? What are we going to do? You know, I was so excited. So I'm 5'8". It came a little bit above my shoulder. So maybe it was like 5'3" or something like that. And very thin being. It had, I don't remember if it was 3 or 4, but it did not have 5 fingers. Holding his hand was the most delicate. It was like holding air or something, like a very delicate child's hand, but even more precious than that. It's so hard to explain. It didn't feel like anything I've ever touched before. That's my first physical sensation that I can remember from actually holding their hand. I was really excited, and it just kind of put its head towards my shoulder, like it was going to lay its head on my shoulder. And as soon as it did that, I felt this blanket of warmth, calm feeling. Like I think it wanted me to quit being so excited, honestly, and to shut up, basically. But it did it in such a way that it's like, okay, like my energy was too intense. Maybe they didn't want me to drop out of whatever frequency I was at and to stay centered and just calm. And I felt like it was a very motherly love type of feeling, but the being felt like a masculine being. And its face was similar to what you maybe have seen on X-Files. The slit for the mouth, didn't have any ears, just the large black eyes. And again, like the glowing kind of skin. And so we're just standing there for a few seconds. And then all of a sudden, from behind me, I feel a hand come around my neck and hold me on my shoulder. And I immediately realized there's 2 of them. And I did for a split second get scared because I didn't know that was here. And I don't like surprises like that. And 2, why is it like putting its hand like, like I felt like is it going to strangle me? But very quickly that thought went by and I started to feel this shot of love again and thought, if they're going to hurt me, they already would have done it by now. They're not going to come to my room and strangle me. That doesn't make any sense. So I just turned around to see the being that was behind me, and it was the same type of being that was standing to my right. The only difference was it was taller, and it was taller than me. I would say it was probably not quite 6 foot. So then I turned around and I held its hand too. Same thing, very delicate hand. And so now at this point, I'm holding both of their hands. And they start leading me through my bedroom. So in our bedroom, we've got one ceiling fan on my side of the bed. And we've got 2, but there's one on my side of the bed that is always on. And if you keep going, you end up going through a laundry room door, and then that door eventually leads to our backyard. So that's the direction we were heading. And I was like, oh, we must be going out into the backyard, and I'm going to see a spaceship and get into a spaceship. So we go past the fan, we get right in front of the laundry room door, and we stop. And I start asking all these questions again. Where are you from? What is your name? Who are you? You know, all this kind of stuff. Just so excited. And I could kind of hear chatter in my head. Like they were talking to each other, but I couldn't make it out. It was just the volume was not turned up enough. It just seemed garbled. At some point, I kept asking, like, what's your name? What's your name? So the one on my right finally said something like, Yarkum. Yarkum, I guess is how you'd say that. And then they just kept talking. And I finally said, can you speak up? I can't hear what you're saying because I want to know. And I heard an okay in my head and then nothing else. I couldn't hear anything else. So anyway, before we continue moving forward, then they showed me a screen just right in the air, right in front of my face, like a TV screen. And on it, it showed my cycles per second. So what I am vibrating at, what is my frequency of vibration in that moment? It said, I want to say it was like 156,000. I think they were trying to communicate to me that like, this is what I'm vibrating at. This is my high vibration. Maybe I need to maintain that. And that's how we can have this interaction. That's how I can remember this interaction. Then after that, we didn't go through the laundry room door. We backed up and took a few steps back. And then we were under the ceiling fan. Then the one on my right took his other free arm and put it around my waist, and I knew they were getting ready to try to pick me up or take me somewhere. I thought, these things probably weigh like 80 pounds or something. They're very small, thin, and I'm a voluptuous lady, and so I thought, there's no way. I was like judging myself in that moment. I was like, there's no way. Like, how would I not think? I mean, hello, these are like magical ET beings in my room. They can speak telepathy. They can move in an instant. Of course, they can move me. I don't know why I even questioned it. But, that's what our human mind does in our ego. So he put his arm around my waist. So then we just start going up. And as soon as my feet left the ground, couldn't see anymore. Obviously, it was dark in my room before. My eyes had adjusted to it long ago, so I could see everything in the room. But this was like pitch black. I could still hear. I could still feel their hands, but I couldn't see anymore, even though my eyes were still wide open. I'm thinking, okay, I'm dematerializing. I guess you can't see when you're dematerialized, even though I could still feel and hear. I thought it was strange that, well, why only my sight? I could hear as we're going up, I could hear the fan blades whirring around. Above us is our home office and then my stepson's bedroom. And I thought to myself, are we going to pass directly through my stepson? I remember being so worried that that would somehow wake him up. He'd scream. My husband would go. Anyway, they would discover I'm not even there. So all this stuff is going through my head about, wow, this is going to be interesting, when I come back trying to explain all this. But I didn't know because I couldn't see. All I knew is I could hear the fan. And this experience maybe lasted 10 to 15 seconds. I wasn't in that black space, blacked out, eyes for very long. And then eventually I could see again. So we went up somewhere. I don't know exactly where we went. I never saw a ship. I never saw the backyard. The last thing I saw was I was in my bedroom. And the next thing I saw after my eyes, now that I could see, was, I don't even want to call it a room because there was no structure to it. There were no walls, no ceiling, no floor. It was just a vast black space in all directions. Other than there were humans, that appeared to be humans, sitting on what, I don't know, sitting on the black, like they were sitting on the ground, in crisscross applesauce style, in a circle, like they were having some kind of meeting. And I actually recognized one of the people in the circle. I'm not going to say their name because that's not the part of this, but I did recognize one of the people. And as soon as I entered the room, it was like we were just passing through it because I kept going up. Like the ETs on either side of me were still lifting me up through this room. This is not where we're staying. But the people that were in this room, in the circle, like talking, having this meeting, noticed us. They turned, waved, and were very happy and jovial. The next room we entered looked like a room. It had walls, ceiling, floor. And everything was a mint green seafoam color. On the wall that was to my left, there was could have been a two-way mirror, could have just been glass window. I didn't really look at it that well, but there was something in the wall there. As soon as we got into this room, I could see what was in the room before my feet hit the ground. So as we're coming up and my whole body is eventually coming up into the room, I could see more humans, except these did not seem like very happy. They were all standing in rows, perfectly distributed throughout the room, and they were all facing the same direction. I started to get scared again. They all appeared to look like they were slightly being shocked. They were standing very upright. Their arms were straight down to their sides, and they were shaking ever so slightly, and like they were being electrocuted a little bit. I just thought, I don't want to be like that. I don't want to be in here. What is that? Why'd you bring me here? Then my feet hit the ground. And as soon as my feet hit the ground, all these people snapped out of it. And I turned and looked at me. And it was like I knew every single one of them. We all knew each other. It was like some big reunion. And there, again, were a few people that I did recognize. Some of these people are like friends of friends. But I'm like, I know your name and I know you. I thought that was very interesting. And there were other people that I do not recognize here from Earth. But in this experience, it's like I knew them. But I don't remember who they are now. The ETs were off to the side by that window thing in the wall. We're just talking to each other again, like just getting caught up and giving each other hugs. It was a great experience, and that lasted, I don't know, 5-10 minutes. Eventually, they encouraged us to get in a circle. So we're standing in a circle and looking at each other, and one of the ETs, I think it was the taller one, I wasn't really looking at it. I was looking to my right because what was happening was the ET, his arm was outstretched kind of in front of my face, pointing to the person, two people to my right. And when I looked at this man, I realized that he's the only one in the room that I didn't recognize. I didn't actually know who that was. And I had just realized that there was this one person that I didn't know. And I thought that was really strange. And the ET was saying, "Do you remember him? Do you remember him?" Over and over. And I started to feel kind of panic because I'm looking at him and I'm thinking, I don't know who that is. He kind of resembled a few people I know. He was a heavy-set guy. He had army-type clothes. He had facial hair, brown hair, and it was white. He was maybe 50. And I'm like, I don't know who this is. And it was just, I felt like this is some kind of trick. They were just like, "Do you remember him? Do you remember him?" And I didn't, but I felt very pressured to give an answer. So I just looked at him and said, "Do I know you from the bank?" As soon as I said that, I was back in my bed, sitting straight up, looking out into the darkness in my room and going, what the hell? I felt so bad because I was like, I failed some weird test. Like, what was that? Who was that guy? Why was I supposed to remember him? I don't know who that was. What was the whole point of everything that just happened? It didn't make any sense. Clearly, it was important that I was supposed to remember this person, but I didn't know who he was. And as soon as I verbalized that I didn't know who he was, bam, I was back in my bed. I don't know what happened after that. Maybe there was something that I just don't remember, but I was sitting straight up in my bed, and the first thing I did was I immediately grabbed my phone to see what time it was and to see how much time had passed. It had been 45 minutes from the time I had originally woken up to let my cat out to now I'm back in my bed. And that felt like the right amount of time that had passed between me trying to go back to sleep, meditate a little bit, have this whole experience, and then be back in my bed. I didn't have any type of missing time. And I immediately voice recorded the whole experience while it was still very fresh on my mind. The next day I woke up, it was a Saturday. And just like every Saturday at that time of my life, I knew I was going to have to log into work. And so that's basically what I did. I told my husband about the whole experience because I was like, you were in it. You were here. Did you notice I was gone? He didn't remember anything. So I just put that out of my mind. I logged into work. I continued to work until midnight that night. And it was one of those things where it's like, I'm done. You're just done. I just decided I quit. I'm quitting. And that's what I did at midnight that night. And that's what consumed me for the next 3 or 4 months is I had a full-time job. Now I do not. I had a good income. Now I have no income. I used to be on a schedule every day. Now I'm not. And so it was a very starkly different reality for me, juggling all that and figuring out what I really want to do because I knew I didn't just want to jump back into a similar situation. I spent several months figuring out what I wanted to do. I felt like there was some mission that I was not fulfilling that I needed to do. I came here to learn about myself. I came here to write. I came here to work with children. I came here to teach. I came here to help people. And so I started thinking about how can I do that? I had told a couple people about this experience and some of my other ET experiences and have met a lot of people along the way. One particular person that I talked to for quite a while suggested that I look into the work of Dolores Cannon. If you've never heard of Dolores Cannon, go look her up now. She developed a technique called quantum hypnosis healing. It's kind of like past life regression, but more than that. She wrote several books on that, as well as past life regressions and people that have had during her sessions experiences with ETs and other worlds and in other lives that aren't just past human lives. She was very familiar with Nostradamus and Edgar Cayce, and she wrote a lot about Jesus and a wide array of topics. She had a lot of things come out in sessions from people, from their subconscious and past lives and future lives. So I looked her up. I started reading several of her books. Then I realized she was from Arkansas. And I'm like, whoa. I've lived in Arkansas almost my whole life and I've never heard of this person. Then I realized that she had passed And I was like, no, I would have loved to have met her, but I have read several of her books anyway. And so I thought, I want to go do a QHHT session. I searched around and there are different levels of practitioners, and I wanted a level 3. They're the most experienced. There aren't any level 3s in Arkansas. So I went to the next closest one, which was near Kansas City, Missouri. And while I was there with her, I prefaced her with, you might hear some strange ET things coming out of my mouth. Before we get started, I'm just warning you. I don't know if she'd ever had any people talk about this kind of stuff. And she said, oh, really? So she recommended a documentary to me of a gentleman who had, through his QHHT experience, retrieved some of his memories because he had had ET experiences also, but there were gaps that he needed to fill and things just didn't quite make sense. And so he worked with a QHHT specialist also in Missouri, and he made a whole documentary about this. So I go back home the next day, and after extremely profound experience with that, I highly recommend a session with QHHT, a level 2 or 3 practitioner. Level 1s are fine too. They're just not as experienced. Okay, so I come home, and it's the next day, and I tell my husband, hey, let's watch this documentary. So we watch it, and about halfway through the movie, a gentleman pops up on the screen. And it's somebody I know in real life. It's someone that I had met online and in a group, and I had interacted with in another ET group. I literally had no idea he had experiences like me too. I just thought he was interested in this type of stuff. I stopped the movie and I messaged him and I'm like, I just saw you on this. It was so exciting. I was already interested in the documentary, but it really piqued my interest and really helped me focus. So we started it up again. And as the guy who made the documentary, he directed, produced it, wrote it, all this kind of stuff. And he was the one who, it's his stories. He was in the film industry, TV industry, and he kind of is like, this has been such a big part of my life. I'm going to start telling this part of my story now. Not a lot of people know this about me. So he was really putting himself out there, and I started to really feel connected to him. About 3/4 of the way through, I just kept saying to my husband, like, God, he looks so familiar. I feel like I had known him or met him some other time. I couldn't put my finger on it. And then it hit me. I looked at my husband and I'm like, it's him. That's the guy. And I reminded my husband, do you remember in January of 2022? And he knew exactly what I was talking about because I had been talking about it for many months, trying to figure out who this guy was and what it all meant. And I was like, that's him. I am 99.99% sure. I don't know, you never really can be 100% sure about anything, but I'm like, that is him. I said, I swear if he says anything about being in the army or anything like that, anything army related, like that's going to be my synchronicity. And I swear to you, not 2 seconds after I said that out loud, in the documentary, this gentleman said the term war of souls. And I was like, that's good enough. Honestly, he said, talk about war. I mean, that is the sign. This is the guy. I had another puzzle piece, but I needed to do something with this. I had my phone by me. Messenger was still open because I had just messaged somebody else that I knew was in that documentary. And I thought, maybe he's on his friends list. How can I find this guy? Maybe he doesn't even have a Facebook. So I just searched around and thankfully he did have a Facebook. And I just messaged him. We were not Facebook friends. I did not otherwise know this person. He didn't know me from Adam. But I just thought, I'll send him a message. If it's meant to be, he'll see it. He'll reach back out to me. So that's just what I did. I sent him a message and said, hey, I think me and you had a profound experience together on a ship. And I gave him the date and approximate time and told him just a little bit about it and said, I saw his documentary and that we have a mutual friend. I would love to talk to you about it. I put my phone down and that was it. And I just kind of forgot about it. I think it was within the same week or two, he messaged me back. And I was just like, wow, totally surprised. And it was funny because in his message, he said, Allison, I never checked this inbox. I didn't even know it existed. And since we're not Facebook friends, if you've ever sent a message to someone that's not your friend, it goes into like a different bucket. And he's like, I've never clicked on it. I just happened to feel compelled to click on it. And he did. And he saw my message and he read it. And he said, yes, I do think we have things to talk about. And I was like, whoa. So we arranged a time to meet within the next few weeks. We got together over Zoom and it was such a wonderful meeting. He told me all about his life. Of course, I'd heard about his story in the documentary and we talked about that and how he got into what he's doing now and how he had all of these plans to. It was actually going to be a 3-part documentary series and this one was the first one. And we just had a lot of things in common about the way our lives had gone. It was just like, wow, I mean, this must have been what they meant on the ship, that maybe I didn't know him yet, but I was going to meet him through this series of synchronicities from telling just the right person about it who suggested Dolores Cannon and QHHT. I found just the right practitioner out of state, and she happened to tell me about this documentary. Then I watched the documentary, and it happened so, all of these things fell into place for me to come across him. Like, it was all meant to be. Finally, he asked me about my story, and I told him my whole story and some of my other stories that I've had since childhood. And he did tell me within that conversation that he had been in the Army, which he didn't talk about in the documentary. And I was like, okay, well, it makes sense why you're wearing those types of clothes. Then he also informed me, which it's like he waited to the end of the conversation to tell me this, I'm sure for a reason, but I thought it was funny, that he would keep a journal of all of his experiences. So when I told him the date and time of my initial experience in January, he said he had missing time that same day. That was good enough validation for me and good enough validation for him that we were both on the ship at the same time meeting each other. I remembered it. And here we are meeting. We kind of ended the conversation like, we don't really know where to go from here. I think we're just supposed to know each other. He lived so far away from me. I'd have to get on a plane to see him, basically. Like, we're in the same country, but on pretty much opposite sides. I'm down south, he's up north. I thought, well, I'll probably never meet him in person. It would be lovely if I could. Maybe we'll run into each other at some UFO conference at some point. But I just thought, wow, this is great. I met you. And it was a really wonderful experience. But I still had this thing gnawing at me. Is that it? Are we supposed to do something together? Are we going to cross paths again? It doesn't feel complete. Finally, I get to meet a person that I've actually seen on a ship, and it proves to me that this is real. I didn't need that proof. I already knew that it was real. I didn't need some person to agree with me that they were there. That felt good, don't get me wrong, but there's something I was missing about it. We kind of stayed in touch through Messenger on and off over the next couple of years. So this happened when I finally did meet him later in 2022, sometime in the fall. So then 2023, 2024, I was still not working full time, but I said, okay, I'm going to follow my passions. I'm going to do what I want to do. I had some money in savings and very supportive family and husband who said, do what you want to do what you love. And I was so thankful for that. So thankful that I had saved up some money so that I wasn't completely broke and could actually take some time off of work. I did a little consulting here and there, painted some murals, did a little life coaching. I did a lot of things in that time period, and I loved it all, and I still do a lot of that. But I decided that I needed to pick up my writing again. I had already been drafting out several children's books and other books and had this dream to be a children's book writer since 2012. That's when I decided I wanted to go back to school to get my degree in early childhood education because I felt like I needed to learn about child development so that I could be a better writer. That's the whole reason I went back to school for that. So I did that, but then I graduated and got my degree and didn't really end up teaching very long, and I also didn't start writing. I did other things and got sucked back into the corporate world. So I was like, you know what? I'm done with that. And I'm going to start writing. So I did. I started writing a children's picture book, a middle grade novel, a story diary of all of my ET experiences. That's like book 3. So I had all of these things in the works, and hopefully this year 2 of those will be published. But these projects have been so personal to me, and I knew that I wanted to go beyond that. So I became a MUFON field investigator, which, if you don't know what MUFON is, it's Mutual UFO Network. And they had a local chapter in Arkansas, up in Fayetteville. So I was able to connect with people that were interested in the same things I was. I got my certification doing field investigations for people that have had sightings and different experiences. So I did that for a little while. It was just at this point in my life where I thought, this is a huge part of my life. I'm having regular experiences with ET, different kinds of ETs. I'm having psychic downloads. I'm having experiences with dead family members. I'm having experiences with out-of-body experiences and astral projection. And I was just, on top of it, I'm reading all these books, Dolores Cannon, and listening to all these channelers. I've got a million books about this kind of stuff. And so was deeply studying this and was doing a lot of inner work and meditation, trying to design the life that I came here for, not just live how people say I should live and how society programs you to live. I have to break out of that. I've always been kind of on the fringe of wanting to live on the edge of what society expects anyway. But I'm like, this is my chance. I can do this now, and I'm not going to live anymore without doing it. And I know that I have a mission. Writing is part of it, and I know working with children is part of it, and helping people and being in my community. So I kind of broke off from MUFON and decided to start my own thing. And so I started a Facebook page called Arkansas UFO and ET Investigations. But I just volunteer my time, and people will report to me. They'll message me, and they either will ask me to do an investigation, and they report something to me. And I go through the spiel and tell them, hey, this is an unknown, or this was a plane, or the natural phenomena. I go through the whole investigative process. Or they'll just want to tell me their story. And I've had some really profound and wonderful conversations and made a lot of new friends from people that just, and not even in Arkansas, people from just different parts of the country have just found me on Facebook saying, hey, share your story with me. And they have, and they'll call me up or message me or email me. And I have been so blessed to be able to talk to so many people, because it's one of my missions. When someone thinks of aliens or ETs in Arkansas and they Google that my name is going to come up, because I want people to see me as a resource, see me as someone who's had those experiences and knows how to get over the fear, raise their vibration, and interact with these beings, and advice that I can give and help people in that, because there's so much more out there than what you can see. You cannot even imagine. If you've not had experiences like this, don't worry. Your life's not over. It's coming for everyone. It was really important for me to offer that. And then on top of that, I've known for a really long time. I started at the beginning of 2024 with a small group of people trying to start a podcast, and that didn't really get off the ground. And then I thought, you know what? Let's get Emily. Let's get the twin. We can make this whole Grounded Galactic Twins podcast, and it'll be great. We can do a podcast, have a YouTube channel, publish my books, maybe go to conferences and talk to people. Maybe we could start hosting our own meetings, meditations, CE5s, just different experiences that we can have with people online, but also here in the local community. I think it's so important to do things in your local community, because a lot of people talk, but they never actually do. So I didn't want to be that type of person anymore. I thought, yes, I have my mission. I've figured it out. And that's kind of where I'm at right now. But I need to back up, because I haven't yet told you about that near-death experience. February 2024. I had known that this person that I had met on the ship that I had been talking to since 2022, who had become a friend, he was battling very aggressive pancreatic cancer. I had been following his updates. We'd done some group meditations, and his son put a lot of updates in GoFundMe and things like that. And it seemed like it was promising. But unfortunately, in February 2024, he did pass. He declined really quickly. It was very devastating. And I almost feel weird saying that, because I never met him in person. I'm not a family member. But I felt this connection that I had with literally no one else on the planet, of someone that I can say, I know you were there and you acknowledged that you were there. Now, I know I said that in my experience, there were people there that I recognized. But let me clarify. Those were not the actual people here on Earth. They were projections. And man, if you've not had experiences like this, it's really hard to describe. They weren't the same people. They were like personality structures, okay? So this individual that I met that passed away, he was the only one that could confirm that this was true and real and all of that. And I hadn't figured out fully why we were supposed to know each other, and he went through this very painful, terrible experience. I mean, I remember when I talked to him last, like, he had all of this beautiful mission and projects he was working towards, because he wanted to make this mainstream. He had 2 more documentaries to do. He was going to open people's minds and really just continue to be vulnerable and open up his life to people and get people to really question their reality and not be afraid to talk about this stuff. And he didn't get to finish his mission. And maybe that's the part that was most heartbreaking to me, is that he had all of these plans and he had completely shifted what he was doing in his life to this now personal mission, and he didn't get to finish it. It absolutely ripped my heart out. Like, it was very sad, and still obviously is very sad to this day. I was like, why was I supposed to know him? I'll never get to meet him in person, hug his neck. I was very sad about it. And obviously sad for him and his family and his mission. So that was February 2024. Fast forward several months. It was September. It was a Thursday night. I had gotten off work and I was at home packing because the next morning, me and Emily and a friend of ours were going to go to Sedona for like a weekend conference of a famous channeler we've followed for years. This trip had been planned for about a year and we're so totally looking forward to it. I remember driving home from work and I had this terrible heartburn that came out of nowhere. And it had been several hours since I'd eaten anything. And it was just very strange. It felt like terrible, terrible heartburn. And I'm like, well, whatever. Maybe, I don't know what it is. So I got about halfway packed and then we decided we were going to eat dinner. While I was eating dinner, I just felt like my heart was pounding. I would get up and walk to the kitchen and walk back, and that would make me so out of breath. Couldn't catch my breath. I'm just thinking, it must be travel anxiety because I do have travel anxiety, especially when I'm traveling by plane. I always have, so I just chalked it up to that. So it got to the point where I couldn't even finish packing. I just was like, I'll get up early in the morning. I'll finish because we had to be at the airport around 10. So I just went to bed and tried to put it out of my mind. And about 11 o'clock or so, I'm laying there. I had been laying there for a while, totally in the dark. And it felt like I was running while I was laying there. My heart was pounding so fast and I felt like I couldn't breathe. I've had panic attacks and anxiety attacks, and this just didn't feel like that. It felt different. But I've also had lots of experiences where I thought I was having an episode and it turned out to be a panic attack, and you go to the ER and they're like, go home, you're fine, go see a therapist. And so I thought, man, I don't want to go on this trip. If I go to the hospital tonight, we may not get out in time for me to be able to pack, to drive to the airport. I don't want to wake my husband up in the middle of the night. And so I thought, I don't want to miss this trip. This was like, I had been looking forward to this all year. I spent all this money. I didn't want to let down my sister and my friend, and I didn't know what to do. But finally, it got to the point, something's wrong, something's wrong. I got out of bed, stood up, and I kind of nudged the husband and was like, can you take me to the ER? I just don't feel like I'm getting enough air, and my heart is going a million miles an hour for seemingly no reason. We went and got to the ER around a little before midnight. There was nobody in there. I've been to the ER several times for various reasons, and I've never been so lucky. There was nobody in front of me. That was absolutely wonderful. So we go, and I could barely stand at the counter to just sign my name in. So they took me back immediately because there was nobody in front of me. The ER doctor that night was phenomenal. So the first thing they did is, you hook you up to all the monitors and all this, and it was clear that my heart rate was really high. And so they go through all the things. If you had heart issues, do you have high blood pressure, blah, blah, blah. And in reality, even at that time, my blood pressure was all over the place. My oxygen was all over the place. My heart rate was all over the place. So they were like, ooh, there's something going on. And I've not had a history with my heart or lungs previously that was serious at all. There were some things when I was a kid, but it wasn't really anything. I wasn't on any type of medications. I don't smoke. I don't drink. I don't know what's going on. So they said, okay, well, especially since my oxygen was dipping, they wanted to do all the tests, blood tests, CT scans and stuff. So after I did the CT scan with contrast on my lungs and heart and everything, which I've done several times before, I know how it feels because I've gone into the ER so many times for panic attacks over the years, probably about 12 times over the years, thinking I was having something besides a panic attack, because I've known for several years now that in our family we have something called factor V Leiden deficiency and the MTHFR mutation, which in a nutshell basically means that with the factor V, our blood has a greater propensity to clot. With the MTHFR mutation, that has to do with like folate and the conversion of folate, but it's also on top of the factor V it like ups your clotting factor even more. It's genetic. And I've not been on blood thinners, but I had never had any clotting events. But I always knew it could happen. So if I had ever in the past had chest pains or shortness of breath, I would go in and tell them I have factor V, and they immediately give you a CT scan. I never had any clots, but it's always something I knew I needed to watch out for just in case. And it's funny, during this experience in September, I literally not once thought that this could be a clot. That's normally where my mind would go if I was having chest pain. But for this, I was just hoping they'd say, nothing's wrong. You're having a panic attack. Go home, so I could go home and pack and go on this trip, okay? But that wasn't the case. I could actually hear my CT results before she even told me because there was nobody in the ER. Our room was right next to the ER doctor's desk area. She was on the phone calling somebody else in the hospital to make sure they had someone on staff and the proper equipment to do a procedure. They thought they might have to do on me. She wasn't saying my name, but I'm like, I'm literally the only one in here. She's talking about a CT scan and all of my symptoms. And I'm like, she's talking about me. And a few minutes later, she comes in and a couple of the nurses come in and they just have this look on their face like, oh shit, you know? And she explained to me, like, she held my hand, the most sweet woman ever. I guess she was trying to calm me down. I'm assuming she knew that I heard what she had said. And so she told me that both of my lungs were filled with blood clots. Pulmonary embolisms is what they're called. Had them in both of my lungs pretty severely. And so that's why my oxygen was dipping. That's why my heart rate was spiked, because my heart was having a hard time getting blood to my lungs because of the blockages. I did find out the next day that I also had a clot in my leg, a DVT in my leg, which is probably where it originated from, but a lot of it was still there. So I had it there and in my lungs. And so I knew immediately that this was very serious. I wasn't going to go on this trip, much less leave the hospital, because the amount of clots that I had is very, very dangerous. Sometimes people can go in and they might have a clot or two in their lungs and they go home. There's no procedure to be done. You just maybe get on blood thinners and do some other things, and that's it. But for me, since I already knew I had factor 5, I knew I was going to have to be on blood thinners for life. I also knew that we need to figure out how to get these clots taken care of. So I had a couple of options. Thankfully, at this hospital, they did have somebody, and it was a fairly new procedure that they had done at this hospital with the equipment, where they would be able to, it's called EKOS, EKOS. I think I'm saying it right. Or essentially, they just put catheters down into your lungs, and they put this clot blasting drug. It's called TPA. It's a really strong blood thinner, and it's supposed to thin it out so that your clots can dislodge and your body can reabsorb them. It was either that or they would go in and actually have to just remove the clots altogether. But that wasn't going to be what I really needed. This other was going to be better for me. I had the hubby call the family members and let them know where I was and that I was about to have this procedure and to come to the hospital whenever they could. They admitted me to the ICU. And then around 11 o'clock a.m. the next day, I did the procedure. And wow, I had a really interesting experience at this hospital. I had never been admitted to a hospital before. There were some people that were like angels walking in human skin. And then there were some people that I'm like, why the hell do you even work here? Because clearly you don't care about your patients. I could go on about all the things messed up with our healthcare system and medical system, but we all already know this, right? Now, this procedure was very new to this hospital. The majority of the nurses in the ICU, other than one, had never seen it, didn't know anything about it. It was just a little bit scary because I'm like, what if something goes wrong? These people don't know what the heck to do about it. That crossed my mind. In order to get me prepped for it, some people came up and they essentially, I either could get the catheters through the veins in my arms or the ones like in my legs, like in the groin area. And with the EKOS procedure, the catheters can't bend or get blocked. So once they put them in, you have to be really still. And the TPA drug, you can have it in anywhere from 4 hours to 24 hours. Before I knew I was going in, my pulmonologist and the cardiologist, who I had never met before, were arguing about how long I should be on it. And one of them was like, oh, you're going to need it for 12 hours. And the other one was like, no, maybe 8. And I'm like, y'all need to get on the same page. That's a huge time difference. Even the nurse was getting frustrated at the cardiologist because he kept changing his mind. And depending on that information was who she was going to prep in the next incoming shift about when all of my stuff needed to be taken out, because they could do that part in the room. I didn't have to go back to the, surgical area. And so finally they figured out it was probably 8 hours would probably be fine. And I'm like, well, probably, it's a great term to use in this situation. They decided that for me, it would be best to try to go for my arm. And I was so thankful for that because I know I can't lay still for 8 hours in the middle of the day. That would have been extremely uncomfortable. So when they were trying to put it in, oh my gosh, that was the most painful thing ever. They had to put 2 in. So they had to find 2 places in my same arm. After they got the first one, which was painful enough, then they got pulled down because someone came in with a heart attack and they needed one of the machines in my room. So then everybody left and I'm just sitting halfway done, which is fine. I understood, but I kind of wanted it to all be done at once. 30 minutes went by. They came back, finished it up, and then took me to the surgery area. Now, this particular type of procedure is you don't have to be under full anesthesia. They give you something to calm you down and make you kind of glassy-eyed, but you're conscious. And I was like, that's fine, I guess, as long as it's not painful, because I was afraid I was going to jerk my arm or something like that. They take me in, And whatever they gave me did absolutely nothing. I was completely aware of everything that was happening. They were really good about talking to me, keeping me calm and asking questions, and it flew by. There was a really great team in there doing that. And the doctor, who had been a little iffy, did really great as well. So we leave there and we come back into the main room. And because of the TPA, you know how generally when you're in the hospital, you've got a bag over here connected to a machine, let's say some saline, and then you've got another machine that's got all your vitals going. So I also had another set of machines. There was 5 different ones, and it looked like I was hooked up to this crazy looking machine, and none of the nurses besides one had ever seen such a thing, and they were very overwhelmed. When I got back to the room, so when we got back to the room, the nurse that I had, who was getting ready to go off her shift, had the other nurse in there, a gentleman nurse, who immediately came in and already had a bad attitude, which I wasn't confident in. And so he came in and she's trying to explain to him all the machines and what to do if the bag, don't let the bags get empty. Here's what you do. Here's when she's supposed to be over with it. So you come in here in such and such time. Do not let the bags run out. And how she kind of anticipated he was supposed to pull it all out, because I had my arm wrapped up like a mummy so tight because I couldn't bend it and I wasn't supposed to really move. They had tons and tons of wrapping and bandages on there and all different types of materials to keep that stiff and still. It was almost like a cast. She was, because he was like, well, what do I do here? And so she's trying to explain to him, I don't know, but figure it out kind of thing. It was very unnerving and uneasy. And I could see my sister recording the conversation on her phone because it was very clear to all of us that they were both confused. And the most confused person was going to be the one taking me off the machines and pulling out the catheters. And so we had very little confidence. It was a very difficult situation to be in. I was extremely disappointed in that male nurse and the female nurse too, who was just going through everything so fast. There were tons of people coming in and out of the room to like ooh and ah over the machines. They'd never seen anything like that before and they wanted to know all about it. And I'm like, this isn't the time. No, come back later or something. So finally, everybody left. It was just me and the husband. And I knew I was going to have to wear it for like 8 hours. Round about 9 o'clock or so that night, here comes the male nurse back. Mind you, one of the bags had run out and he didn't do anything about it. I didn't notice it because I was trying to not die. My oxygen was all over the place. My heart rate was still all over the place. They didn't want me, obviously, to move as much as I could. I couldn't use the bathroom. It was extremely uncomfortable. Not only that, but I'm thinking I'm going to die. It was wild, absolutely wild. So I had doctors coming in and out all day. Again, I saw a pulmonologist, cardiologist, the hospitalist, different people coming in and out and telling me what I can expect when I get out and things like that. And my pulmonologist, he was really interesting. Very nice person, very knowledgeable. I kept asking him lots of questions about my recovery because I thought he's a lung doctor. He's going to be the one I really, really need to talk to. What if I have scarring? What if? And he stopped me in the middle of my questions and said, don't get ahead of yourself. You need to focus on getting out of the hospital because you might not. He just made it very clear that I needed to be focused right here, right now, that the TPA and the ECOS procedure would work, that my oxygen would levelize, my heart rate would levelize, and that the clots would quickly dissolve. And he explained the procedure and everything, and that, it's not a guarantee. And I was like, paid? He's like, don't worry about 3 or 4 months from now. You need to worry about right now, It's like it had already kind of been in my mind, obviously, that this was a life or death situation, but he really kind of ran it home for me. I remember when I was first in the ER before they took me back to the ICU, in between the time that they saw the CT, they knew I had the clots, but they didn't get me to a room right away. They wanted to try something to slow my heart rate. And I don't remember the name of the drug. It started with a D, but they came in and said, we need to get your heart rate down. Your heart rate could not be doing this for extended periods of time or obviously could fail, like something could go wrong. And they said, okay, this is going to slow your heart down. What are you supposed to think when someone says that to you? Like, is this the opposite of an epi? Is my heart going to stop? And they said they would start with the smallest dose. If that didn't work, they would up the dose. And I'm like, Jesus, you're going to give me more than one? There were 2 nurses standing to the side and the ER doctor was standing on my left, holding my hand. This was probably the first time that I was like, oh shit, I might die. And then the pulmonologist later on reminded me like, oh shit, you might die while you're here. You need to just focus on getting better right now and doing what we tell you. Anyway, so she was holding my hand and they gave me the first dose. And I said, before they did it, I said, what am I going to feel? What are the side effects? Her whole demeanor changed. And I was like, Jesus, what is she about to tell me? And she was squeezing my hand and she said, some people feel a sense of impending doom, like they're going to die. And I was like, oh, okay. That was the only side effect that she told me. I was okay with that because I literally have had that feeling. Because a lot of times when I've had ET experiences, the vibration they're giving off, it makes you feel like you're going to die sometimes. Between that and other astral projections and things that I've had, I literally was like, oh, I can do that. Not a big deal. So they gave me the first thing. And it washes over you. Like if you've ever been in a CT where you get the dye, it goes through you and it's like a warm feeling of intensity. You can feel like head, it comes down into your chest, goes down through your legs, your feet. So you kind of feel that progression. And this was like that too. And it did feel like this intense, I'm about to die right now feeling. My eyes started getting blurry and I felt like I was going to pass out. Everything got very narrow. I could still see the people standing by the bed, but my perception of everything was very narrow. Like my senses, for whatever reason, were very narrow, like I was kind of being stretched out of my body. I immediately recognized that feeling and I'm like, this is exactly what they're talking about. And she was like, just look at me, just look at me. So I was just looking at her and it finally passed. I looked at the machine. It didn't touch my heart rate. It didn't slow it down at all. As soon as it passed, I said, I know what people are talking about. I've had that experience before. She's like, whoa. He looked at my husband and was like, you got a brave one over here. I was like, honestly, I've had experiences like this before. I didn't tell her that they were ET experience, but I was like, I've had this feeling before. So then they upped it and I'm like, is this one actually going to make me, is this going to be worse than that feeling? Because it's not a great feeling, but if you're used to it, at least you know what to expect. So they gave me another higher dose of it. Again, same thing, just stronger. Look at the monitor. It did nothing. So they were very concerned about causing permanent damage to my heart, which I did end up having, right heart strain, and then one of my valves, I think it's a tricuspid, sometimes has regurgitation. I already had mitral valve prolapse since I was a kid, but it's very mild. After the pulmonologist told me that, I was like, okay, let's just focus on now. Let's just focus on getting better. And I started thinking about, like, I'm not afraid of death. I've never been afraid of death. I know that death is not the end. I know that we are just these grand souls having a human experience and we go back to our soul and leave our 3D body behind. Everyone dies when they choose to die in spirit and all of this. I've never feared it. Like, obviously, I don't want it to be a painful, terrible death. Who does? But I wasn't worried about that for myself. Obviously, I was very scared for my family. I didn't want to leave my family, my kids, my husband. And I also knew that I have books that aren't finished. Who's going to finish them? Who's going to publish them? These are meant to be. I started thinking about the documentary filmmaker that I've told you about and how he couldn't finish and how that wasn't going to happen to me. I wasn't going to die. This wasn't it. So here comes 9 p.m. The male nurse comes in and he and 4 other nurses come in because they want to see this whole process of removing the catheters. Actually, there were 6 nurses. 2 were helping him, 4 were observing, and then him, so 7. And while he's trying to take off this practically a cast because there's plastic wrap and bandages and tape, like really sticky tape. And then, of course, the catheters themselves were double taped, so they wouldn't move. I was extremely disappointed in the hospital and the staff in the ICU at that time because this gentleman who had an attitude from the beginning of his shift continued to have an attitude 8 hours later, 9 hours later. And of the 2 nurses that were helping him, sweet, lovely female nurses, there were 4 other nurses. 3 of them were males that came in to watch. And it was like a frat party. They were like, oh my gosh, I think I saw this one time. And oh, but the person that had it in their groin. And they're just laughing and joking. And I'm like, shut the fuck up. I'm sitting there next to my husband going, I didn't understand. He is so frustrated because he could not get all the stuff off of my arm. He couldn't get it off. He had to get these extra sharp scissors. He's frustrated, in a rush, trying to get it done. And he cuts me. He cuts my arm. Like, are you fucking kidding me? And I knew the female nurses were also getting pissed about it. And one of them looked at the guys and said, shut up, the patient is right. Why are you talking like this in front of the patient? And then they settled down. But the male nurse who was dealing with me was still very frustrated and he was rushing. And so he cut me with these scissors. And so I said to him, like, the tortoise wins the race. He finally realized he needed to slow the fuck down and concentrate. He finished taking it all off, took the catheters out. He sprayed blood all over the 2 female nurses because he wasn't paying attention when he was pulling them out. And anyway, it was just the most ridiculous crap. I was so glad when it was out, and he had me rebandaged back up because I was bleeding and things. Got me all wrapped up, and he was, thank God. And then by that time, it was like we were so exhausted, and I was on bed rest. They wouldn't let me get up even to use the bathroom, but I finally convinced them, like, I can't do like the bedpan thing. I can't, like, my mind just won't let me do that. I convinced them to bring me a bedside toilet, and the nurse like helped me in there because they didn't want me. It was very dangerous for me to be moving around because I had the DVT in my leg and other clots in my lungs that were potentially moving around. It's pretty rare for it to move this is what I was told later, from the venous side to the arterial side. They didn't want that to happen. If it moved to the arterial side, then I would have a clot, like a blockage in my heart, or it could go to my brain. And obviously I didn't want to have a stroke or heart attack or anything like that. Finally, maybe like 11 o'clock that night, my husband finally had fallen asleep. And I was just laying there in bed. The machine's constantly beeping at me. I couldn't go to sleep. I was very uncomfortable. I still felt like I couldn't really breathe. I'm sitting there thinking about everything that had happened that day and just the gravity of the situation. Thinking about my family and my projects. What if I don't get to finish? And that was hitting me pretty hard. As I'm laying there contemplating all of this, my eyes were open. I was sleepy. And it was dark in the room. I mean, there's some light coming in from under the door. So the room had kind of a blue tint. I start seeing, it looked almost like a mist or a smoke in the room. Kind of like waves. If you want to think about, like, think of them now as dimensional waves or something. I also felt like I have felt in so many experiences before whenever I've had situations with like ET beings or interdimensional beings or other spirits that, like, the room changes. You feel the air change. You feel the atmosphere change. Sometimes you feel another presence in the room. So that's what was happening. I really wasn't surprised because I was sitting over here not knowing if I'm even going to get out of the hospital. I realized later that I didn't realize it in the moment. You don't realize it in the moment. I realized it later after it was done that it was a near-death experience. And everyone's near-death experience is different. I didn't see like God and bright lights. I didn't go anywhere. I was still in my body, but it was like they came to me. And so I'm sitting there in bed and I'm seeing these things in front of my eyes and I could feel a presence. I did not see a being, but I could feel like my main spirit guide was there in front of the bathroom door. I don't know if you've ever, I don't know what you'd call it, but experiences with other beings. Sometimes we'll get downloads. Downloads are like packets of information that just immediately come into your brain and you have a whole lot of new information all at once. And it's just a knowing. You don't have to have an experience and go through something to have the memory. It's just in your head now. It's new information that wasn't there before. Sometimes you get a download and the information does not reveal itself until later. You don't remember it until later, but sometimes you know it right then. That's what was happening with me. I was getting a download. It was like in front of my face, I could see, you know how people talk about, oh, your life flashes in front of your eyes. It was kind of similar to that. Except it wasn't from childhood to now, it was from now back to childhood. And I was being shown my whole life story in what felt like 30 seconds. I had all these memories coming back of how I got here now, all the synchronicities that led up to this moment, everyone that I had met, everything. I mean, I was thinking about memories from high school 20 years ago and things when I was a kid. All of this stuff was being presented to me in front of my face while all this misty stuff is going around in the room. I knew in that moment, in that 30 seconds or whatever that I was getting that download, I was given the information of exactly how I ended up here and that this is exactly where I was meant to be. This was preordained. I set up this significant event before I came into this life and that this is exactly where I was supposed to be. And I got the impression that out of 100 Allisons, 99 of them would have gotten on the plane, ignored the symptoms, and would not have gotten off the plane, period. But this Allison, the 100th Allison, was the timeline that I was on, not the other 99. And this is what I had set into place. It was like this knowing that just came into my head. And I felt this overwhelming sense of just love and trust and serenity. As that was ending, I could sense that the ending of this packet of information was coming. Then I got this, it was no longer like in front of my eyes, but it was like an image in my head. And my guide was showing me the correct ending to my ET experience that I had in January of 2022. Because up to that point, what I had remembered was them asking me, do you remember him? Do you remember him? Over and over. And it was so much pressure. I just felt like I had to say something. And then I came out of it feeling like I failed a test. And then I ended up meeting the guy, and then he dies. And I had no idea. Why are they showing me this? It felt very disconnected from the experience I was actually having at the hospital. But my guide was showing me this specific memory and the end of it, and was showing me how it really went. And how it really went was they weren't asking me, do you remembering? They were commanding me to remember him, over and over. And then another packet of information about my experience with him and his mission and my mission and all of this. And I immediately knew. That's the reason why I was supposed to know him. This version of me. To see everything that he went through, all the parallels in our lives. And that he had this death experience and he did not get to finish his mission. That's why I was supposed to know him. Because I was being given this chance to finish mine. This was the timeline I was on. And I was not going to be taken. That I was staying. I was going to be okay. And that I would get to finish my books and all my projects and all the things that I want to do to serve humanity. This is what I'm here for, and I'm going to get to finish it. And he didn't. And I could feel him too. Like I could feel him there in the room, just kind of watching it and being there. Like everything was so crystal clear. I knew how I'd gotten there, why I needed to know this man, and most importantly, what the rest of my life is going to be and what I'm here to do. So that's where we're at now. That was September. I got out of the hospital a few days after that. I was at home with medication and regularly see cardiologists, hematologists, all the doctors, all the things. My heart is doing a lot better. I've had issues with low iron and low ferritin, so I've been getting infusions, and we're going to have to deal with that because that also exacerbates heart issues. I've had a lot of scans, and as far as I know, right now, I have no clots. I'm going to be checked again in a few weeks. I have some procedures coming up that are hopefully going to help me with some issues and kind of like the light at the end of the tunnel. Because, since September, I've had so many issues with not being able to breathe and feel like I have clots again and the same symptoms as before. And I've gone to the ER 8 additional times at different hospitals, trying to find answers. And like all the while, just trying to integrate everything I've learned, continue with my mission, know what I need to do. I have felt not out of the woods for a while. I definitely feel like I'm in the upswing now. I know it could have been so much worse. I could have had a very different experience. I've had a very supportive family. I've had time to continue with my projects and enhance them quite a bit. I'm really looking forward to getting these 2 books published this year. One of them is a children's picture book, and the other one's a upper middle grade kind of novel. Really excited about that. I do plan on putting this whole story and all the other tidbits into a book, as well as my other ET experiences. I hope that's going to be book number 3. I've already started on it, but it's so personal and so emotional. And there's still a lot of people in my life that don't know anything about this stuff. They don't know anything about my ET experiences, and I don't know what they're going to think. Hopefully they're not judgy. But just know this is real, and I'm very thankful to be here. And I just encourage everybody to do what you love. Follow your passions. Stop sacrificing your time and your sanity doing things you don't want to do. Being places you don't want to be and around people you don't want to be around. Stop trying to be somebody you're not. Stop trying to fit some mold that somebody has put you in. Stop trying to prove yourself to your parents or your boss, whoever. Do what you're passionate about. Everyone has a gift to give to the world. Those things that you love to do, those are your gifts. Somebody is there to receive them, and they can support you. I just encourage anybody that's out there that's listening and they're like, I hate my life. I don't know why I'm doing this. This is terribly stressful. It's just not me. You're right. It's not you. You can take back your life and do what you were meant to do. And I've got my chance to do that. And I want you to have your chance to do that. Don't wait until you have some significant life event, some near-death experience to kick your butt back into reality. Don't wait for that. Do it now. As always, we end our podcast with big questions. What is it you're passionate about, and what's holding you back from it? Take time to stop and reflect on your life. Do it daily, weekly, however often. Do it often enough, though. Once you do that reflection, you'll have realizations. Once you have those realizations, you can start revolutionizing your life. Take the actions, even if it's something small. It doesn't have to be some huge thing. You don't have to quit your job like I did, okay? Make small changes if that's what you want to do. Start being in the driver's seat. It's your life. No one can control you. You need to be in control and have power over your own life. You've always had it. You're just acting like you don't. And as always, please reach out to me. I'd love to hear your story. Anything about your life that you'd like to share, I'm here to listen. groundedgalactic@gmail.com. We've got a website, groundedgalactic.com. You can get to all of our links, podcast episodes, YouTube channel, see what we're working on, upcoming projects. I think that's everything. If you have listened to this whole thing, bless your heart. I hope that it helps you in some way. That's the only reason I've shared this, is because I want my story to help people and inspire people. I love all of you so, so much.